Sick and tired of your Ism Schism, trying to go to heaven in the Ism Schism. We know and we understand.
Greetings, family. This edition of Garveyism Verses will be dealing with common isms and schisms. So what are isms? An ism is a distinctive practice, system, or philosophy, typically a political ideology or an artistic movement. Here is a list of some different isms. Absolutism, colonialism, feudalism, and imperialism are all types of monarchies. Nihilism, social Darwinism, and the one I wanted to highlight the most on this one was individualism, the belief that the state is less important than the individuals who make up the state. Now, this is tricky for Black people in our Black nation. Well, we'll remember that moving forward. First, we'll deal with capitalism. It's an economic system in which individuals retain control of capital, dealing with money. However, the U.S. is a mixed economy, exhibiting characteristics of both capitalism and socialism. The U.S. economy differs from pure capitalism because a pure capitalist economy has never existed. Moving forward, Black capitalism is a segregated economic system, not separated. It says segregated. Segregated means it's forced upon you. Separated is voluntary. Moving forward, it says Black capitalism failed to alleviate the racial wealth gap because it wasn't actually free market capitalism, since it was blocked by structural inequalities like racism and discrimination. Over to the right here, you see an interview where it says, we have never had a purely capitalist economy. There's always been U.S. capitalism and then Black capitalism. And back over here you see Black capitalism was created by Richard Nixon through his plan for Black America, and it turned out to be a bad check for Black America. Moving forward, socialism, a system of government in which the economy is managed solely by the government. The quote-unquote first socialist society was the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. However, no country has implemented 100% socialism. Okay? Understand that even though they called themselves the socialist republics, there's never been a country that implemented 100% socialism. The most socialist countries in the world, however, include India, Russia, North Korea, China, and Cuba. Moving forward, communism, a political theory derived from Karl Marx, advocating class war and leading to a society in which all property is publicly owned and each person works and is paid according to their ability and need. Communism is based upon the ideas of common ownership and the absence of social classes, money, and state. Marxism is a social, political, economic theory that originated from Karl Marx, focusing on the struggle between capitalists and the working class. Remember that class war thing he was talking about up here. All right. And one more thing, no communist state has ever been able to eradicate private economic activity. This will be capitalism and socialism outside their existing law. So what you see here is communism, socialism, and capitalism. There's never been a country that existed that was 100% any of those. All right. They were always a mix of something. Moving forward, totalitarianism. It's a form of government or political system that prohibits opposition parties, restricts individual opposition to the state and its claim, and exercises an extremely high degree of control over its public and private life. It is regarded as the most extreme and complete form of authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is a form of government characterized by the rejection of political plurality, with reductions in the rule of law, separation of powers, and democratic voting. Examples of totalitarian dictatorships are Hitler, Stalin, and the USSR through its entire existence. So when we go back to that communist thing or the socialist, the USSR, although socialist republics was in the title, it was a totalitarian dictatorship. The regime of Benito Mussolini in Italy and the People's Republic of China under Mao Zedong. Here at the bottom, you see Nazism, which is actually National Socialism. All right, that was the practice of the Nazi Party. You see Leninism, Stalinism, Mussoliniism, and Maoism to represent the countries that we just spoke about. Moving forward. So democratism versus republicanism. They may not be what you think. Democratism is a doctrine or belief in social equality or the right of all people to participate equally in politics. Support for or advocacy of democracy as a political system or ideology. Republicanism, on the other hand, comes from the word republic. However, they are not the same thing. A republic is a type of government, while republicanism is an ideology. Now, if you remember, Marcus Garvey always speaks about creating a republic. All right, moving forward. Down at the bottom here, you see, while often categorized as a democracy, the United States is more accurately defined as a constitution federal republic. It actually tells you in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and to the republic for which that flag stands. Moving forward. Anti-establishmentarianism is a policy or attitude that views a nation's power structure as corrupt, repressive, or exploitive. Many organizations and groups that have formed different ideologies, etc., have anti-establishmentarian ideologies. However, this is not a universal blanket for everybody. All right, this is just an understanding that whatever government is in power, wherever, if they are corrupt, repressive, and exploitive, if you are anti that, you are anti-establishmentarian. All right, and one note is notable for its unusual length of 28 letters and 12 syllables, one of the longest words in the English language. So here's another term that's not really an ism: stateless nation, an ethnic group or nation that does not possess its own land or state and is not the majority population in any nation state. The term stateless nation implies that that group should have such a state. Members of stateless nations may be citizens of a country which they live, or may be denied citizenship by that country. Stateless nations are also classified as fourth world nations. You see here, some nations were always a stateless nation, dominated by other nations. Fourth world nations are also subpopulations existing in a first world nation, but with the living conditions of a third world or developing country. The term nation, while we're speaking, we're using the definition of the fact or status of being a nation, national identity or independence, or a large body of people united by a common descent, history, culture, or language, inhabiting particular country or territory. All right, moving forward. You see here a term that you may be familiar with: Zionism, the idea that Jewish people should occupy their homeland. The Jewish state was an attempt at a modern solution to the Jewish question. Theodore Herzl said, "I think all Jews will always have sufficient enemies, such as every nation has. But once fixed in their own land, it will no longer be possible for them to scatter all over the world." So now you see here, fixed in their own land was the Jewish solution. That is Zionism. And their attempts, their proposals for their own land were more than just in Israel. Here you see at the bottom, Ararat City in 1820 was at Grand Island in the Niagara River. The British Ugandan program would have them go to Uganda in 1903. The Jewish Autonomous Oblast in Russia in 1934. The Fugu Plan later on in 1979. All right, and back in the 40s, you had the Nazi Madagascar Plan, the British Guyana Plan, the Northwest Ethiopia Plan, and the Port Davey Plan in Australia. Mind you, there are many more. Currently, they're occupying Palestine. Moving forward. You see here Zionism. You see the Jewish state represents a stateless nation. All right. So what they were doing was trying to come up with a proposal for their own homeland. Moving forward. So what is nationalism? An idea and movement that promotes the interests of a particular nation, especially with the aim of gaining and maintaining the nation's sovereignty over its homeland. Nationalism is a policy or doctrine of asserting the interests of one's own nation, viewed as separate from the interests of other nations. Remember earlier we talked about segregating versus separated. One is forced, one is voluntary. All right. Modern nationalism is rooted in part in French and American revolutions. This historic nationalism is generally viewed favorably, all right, and a cornerstone of Western liberalism and democracy. Moving forward. So then what is Black nationalism? It is an idea and movement that promotes the interests of the Pan-African nation, especially with the aim of gaining and maintaining the nation's sovereignty over its homeland. Black nationalism is a policy or doctrine of asserting the interests of one's own nation, viewed as separate from the interests of other nations. Modern Black nationalism is rooted in part in slave revolts and the Haitian Revolution, and this historic nationalism is generally viewed favorably and a cornerstone of the Declaration of Rights of the Negro Peoples of the World. Here we see nationalism and Black nationalism compared side by side, and the preamble from the Declaration of Rights of Negro Peoples of the World. It states, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League is a social, friendly, humanitarian, charitable, educational, institutional, constructive, and expansive society. Now, remember, we spoke about a republic being able to expand over wide areas or wide regions. And we're supposed to work for the utmost for the general uplift of the Negro peoples of the world in an expansive society. That is Black nationalism. Moving forward. So Garveyism is Black nationalism. So just to define it a little more clearly, Garveyism is the idea that the African people should occupy their homeland. Now, Garvey always said, Africa for the Africans at home and abroad. Now, let's be clear. This does not mean that Garveyism is a back to Africa movement, because very clearly you see the word abroad, meaning wherever we are domiciled on the planet, we should look to Africa as our homeland and help make it strong so it can support us physically if we do want to go back, and otherwise if we stay wherever we are as our homeland. The UNIA-ACL was an attempt at a modern solution to the Negro problem. What was our problem? Trying to find our homeland or strengthen our homeland. Okay? We had the Liberia move in 1920. Black nationalism is a self-help philosophy. What's so good about it? It's a philosophy that eliminates the necessity for division and argument. Many times you see Black folks trying to find a way to divide themselves from the Black nation. However, Black nationalism is a philosophy that eliminates the necessity for division and argument. Garvey tells us, whatsoever things common to man that man has done, man can do. Babylon did it. Assyria did it. France under Napoleon did it. Germany under Prince von Bismarck did it. America under George Washington did it. Africa with 400 million Black people can do it. And if you cannot do it, if you are not prepared to do it, then you will die. So you see here, Garveyism is another representation of a stateless nation or a fourth world nation, okay? Currently without a state, but should have one. Remember, that was the definition. Here we see, in comparison to Zionism, where they were looking for their homeland, the different proposals that they had. Two of the proposals that the UNIA-ACL had was, of course, the Liberia program in 1921, but then in 1922, the UNIA-ACL petitioned to the League of Nations, currently the United Nations, for transfer to the Black race, the German colonies of East Africa and Southwest Africa after the war. This petition was denied. However, just as the Zionists pursued their goal and attained it, quote unquote, we should maintain our pursuit to uplift, build, and strengthen our nation that expands wide regions. Moving forward. So Garveyism, our basic structure, the UNIA-ACL, we are a direct democracy currently, where it means one man, one vote. Down at the bottom, you see where the people, these are the divisions. Each division has a president. However, all of the people have one vote that go up to the President General, who governs via parent body. And here you see our illustrious list of President Generals, from the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey all the way down to our 11th President General and Administrator, the Honorable Michael R. Duncan. And we leave you with that. Obviously, Garveyism is Black nationalism. Race first.
Sick and tired of your Ism Schism, Dying for the heaven in the Ism Schism. We know and we understand.